After 50 years of making people laugh, Don Knotts' daughter Karen just told the truth. That was when she was only 10 years old. At home, he had real panic attacks, sadness, and thoughts of ending it all, even though he played the nervous guy on TV. He was going to see scary things that kids shouldn't see, so Karen had to talk him down. Being held together by his daughter was all that the man who won 5 Emmys could do. This is what she didn't tell anyone. Don Knotts was born on July 24, 1924, but no one was happy to see him. It was a surprise. Elsie, his mom, was already 40 years old. His father had a mental illness and his 3 boys were almost grown up. He or she was born in 1906. The person who is most like Don in age was born in 1910. That's 14 years between them. Author Daniel de Vizet later said that he was the child who was born by chance. It was true that no one was waiting for him to be born. It was clear. The family had just lost their farm. They did not have any money. His dad wasn't able to work. To make money, his mom rented out rooms to college students. Their Morgantown house on University Avenue wasn't a house. It was a mess of sad people and strangers. Don didn't have a bedroom in the middle of it all. Don slept on a cot in the kitchen while everyone else had beds with doors they could close. He went to sleep every night to the sounds of dishes clinking, the smell of leftover food, and loud voices. You could not be alone, be quiet, or feel at ease. He had to walk through the living room to get to the bathroom. His dad, Jesse, spent most of his time there. Some people think Jesse had schizophrenia, but he was also a drinker who was broken. He was scary, aggressive, and hard to predict. He would yell and hit. He would sometimes pull out a knife. Do you remember when you were a baby and your father held a knife to your throat? Asked Don's mother when he was 30 years old. He forgot about it. He might have. And hid it. It wasn't just his dad though. His brothers were not much better. Willis and William Earl, who was known as Shadow, drank a lot. They made fun of him and sometimes were even meaner. They were mean to him and didn't treat him like a brother. Don still looked up at Shadow though, because Shadow was funny no matter what. People would laugh at him, even in that painful house. He saw that and wished he were like him. Shadow was the only thing that gave Don hope for a short time. Then Shadow died suddenly in 1941 from asthma. Don was only 16 years old. In 1937 he lost his father first and then the only brother he looked up to. He made someone to replace him because the pain was too much. A fake ventriloquist named Danny. That's how Don dealt with things, even though it sounds weird. He made up people because the real one was too much to handle. He kept to himself at school. He looked pale and sick and he was always tense. But he found out something. People paid attention when he acted or made them laugh. For a short time they liked him. He felt like someone saw him. He never got over his need to be liked or to run away. It gave his humor power. It made him into the tense, jittery actor he would become famous for. But it made him angry too. Behind the scenes he was sick with depression and worry. Karen, his daughter, said she had to be his doctor a lot of the time. The pain never really went away. The house didn't help. Elsie turned their house into a full-time guest house after Jesse died. Boys from college came and went. His mom tried to make rules and get girls to leave the rooms she rented. But there was confusion. Don slept in the kitchen again. He and his brothers still fought. Life was hard, there was no peace or order. It took a huge load off of Don's shoulders when Jesse died at age 55. He was finally safe enough to walk through the house. He was able to breathe. He did well for a while. He made friends. He was even chosen to be class president. But there was a price to pay for freedom. When Jesse left, all the money went away. Elsie had lost her husband and was now running a boarding house with 4 boys to feed and no money in the bank. But Don found something that made him feel safe. Danny, a ventriloquist doll. It was like his pain had a voice that wasn't his own when he talked through Danny. At age 12 turned hardship into a skill. It wasn't just for fun for Don when he got to high school. He had real money. From 1938 to 1942, while he was at Morgantown High School, he took his act on the road, clubs in the area, birthday parties, and church socials. He made $25 to $50 a show, which is about $400 to $800 today. In the last few years of the Great Depression, that much money meant something. Many families were having a hard time, but Don's skills helped his own stay alive. Every weekend he did 3 to 4 shows all over Monongalia County. Newspapers even wrote about his shows. Dan and Don Knotts became well-known names. Some people hired him a year ahead of time. He was only 16 years old, but he already had a small business making movies and shows. Hugh already had a small business making movies and shows. What was that applause? It wasn't just noise. It was power. Don set his sights on New York City after finishing in 1942. He had $300 saved up, a wooden box, and complete faith in himself. A tiny room near Times Square cost him $8 a week, so he moved around and knocked on doors at theaters, bars, and talent agencies. The big city didn't care about stars from small towns though. The war changed how people had fun. Folks liked jazz, dance, and well-rehearsed stage shows. It's not so good at ventriloquism. Don was able to live for 3 weeks before his money ran out. He got cash by pawning Danny and bought a bus ticket to go home. He went back to Morgantown with no money, no heart, and $50 in debt. It was the first time he had really failed, but it also helped him understand what it would take to get to the major leagues. Signed up to become a teacher at West Virginia University that fall. The education major became a member of the Phi Sigma Kappa Club, but he never really locked Danny up. He kept playing at events on campus and his confidence slowly came back. Then the age to join the draft went down. In the beginning of 1943, he understood he could either wait to be called up or take charge. He joined on March 15th, trying to make his own way. In his file at Fort Hays it said that he was good at performing. That little thing changed everything. The basic training Don went through at Camp Crowder, Missouri, made him more than just another soldier. People noticed how good he was at being funny, timing jokes, and boosting mood. The Army needed more than just fighters. It needed people to entertain. Don didn't get turned down this time. Instead, he found the first real chance that would change his future. It was known as Stars and Gripes. It wasn't just a cool name. The show was funny, even though it was in a war zone. There were no shots fired by Don Knotts. In the middle of the Pacific, he was making jokes, ventriloquism shows, and dodging air raids. His Army friends had rifles, but he had a dummy named Danny Hooch Matador. They put on shows together for tired and scared troops, sometimes right before Japanese bombing raids lit up the sky. Al Checo, one of his fellow singers, said that the attacks always happened right before he sang his first song. During the show, air raid sirens would go off and the group would run into foxholes. They would then come out, clean up, and finish their act. It wasn't just one job. For months they went on tour and played everywhere, from airplane carriers to faraway islands. There were times when 2,000 men showed up. Sometimes 10,000. A lot of people liked Don's show with his dummy. But Don really hated that dummy. He had been dragging Danny around since middle school, but something changed in him when he was out there with all the death and chaos. One day, Danny's suitcase disappeared while he was unloading tools. Knotts just shrugged and said, "I don't know," when someone asked where it went. That was not true. He finally accepted it years later. The fake was thrown into the Pacific. He just walked to the edge of the boat and threw it overboard. He said, "I got tired of being the good guy to a piece of wood." One story says that Knotts joked that he could hear the dummy screaming as the waves took it away. He changed the story and said he left it on a beach in his book. He told his friends the truth though. Danny went too far. That wasn't just the end of a puppet show. Don Knotts, the one-man comedy show, was born. Most people don't know how many awards he had, even though he had never been to fight. He was picked up by the Army in 1943, even though he was only 100 pounds. In reality, she was 1 pound under the limit. He had to sign something to serve. But he had a lot of medals by the time he left the Army in 1946. This medal has 4 medal stars. One for each of the 4 campaigns in the Asiatic Pacific Campaign. It was given to people who helped win World War II. He had served in places where bombs were more likely to go off, like New Guinea and the Philippines. They were known to come. And even though he was a performer, he wasn't just being silly. It was with the M1 carbine that he won the Army Marksman Badge. He was able to shoot. The Army Good Conduct Medal, the American Campaign Medal, and the Honorable Service Lapel Pin were also given to him. His service number was 35,756,363. From June 21, 1943, to January 6, 1946, he was in the Army. Almost 3 years of moving around, practicing, bombing, and putting on shows kept troops whose spirit was about to break. Friends and family in West Virginia made fun of Don when he was first drafted at age 19. They said that if someone like him was going to fight, the country must be losing the war. But the army thought he was good. After the first few weeks of training at Fort Bliss, Washington sent a message. He was told to go to Fort Meade and join the Army show. The top brass wanted him to be funny more than fight. He was a mechanic grade 5 when he left the service. It was like a corporal in the Army. After that, he used the GI Bill to go back to school right away. He got his degree in theater at West Virginia University in 1948. He had minors in theater and speech as well. He joined Alpha Psi Omega and Phi Sigma Kappa while he was in college, where he got better at being funny by playing at talent shows and parties. The radio station at his university turned him down, saying that his voice wasn't good enough for radio. When that refusal came back, it would look silly. Don married a classmate named Kay Metz on December 27, 1947, not long before she graduated. She came from Wheeling and was the daughter of a Baptist preacher. Things weren't great after finishing in the spring of 1948. It was Don's job to sell toys at a Morgantown department store. It was hard to get money. The store's Santa Claus, though, took Don aside one day and said something simple but strong. "Try New York again." One line set a fire. Don and Kay left for the big city with only $120, $100 of which was cash. Got it from Don's brother. Things didn't go his way right away in New York, but they did start to go his way. Bob Benson and the B-Bar B-Riders was the first big break he got on the radio. Don played Windy Wales, a silly and loud friend who was based on Gabby Hayes from old Western movies. The show had already been on once in the 1930s, but when it came back in 1949, Knott's character became the most famous part of the show very quickly. It ran until 1955, longer than shows like Superman, Sky King and Captain Midnight, which were also popular with kids. The money was Don's first steady pay in the business. Getting the job was made possible by a radio host he met in the Army named Lanny Ross, who put him in touch with a talent agency. Windy Wales was also more than just a funny voice. It was a big change in Don's job. The ventriloquist dummy he had thrown into the Pacific during the war was no longer used in his shows, and he turned his full attention to comedy. Television was really taking off by the early 1950s. Don entered that world with a part he played on the CBS soap opera Search for Tomorrow from 1953 to 1955. He had never really acted on TV before. He got a steady paycheck and learned new things. It also helped him work with some big names in the future. In the end, Lee Grant, Robert Loggia and even Kevin Bacon would be on that show. In 1953 there was a scene that was really unique. Don played a man who was unconscious. Before the live show, the organizers filmed him moving around and then put that footage on top of it to make a dream sequence. At that time, that was a pretty rare TV trick. Don became popular because he was on Search for Tomorrow, but it did help him become known and teach him how to work in front of a camera. Then things began to change. From 1956 to 1960, Don was on The Steve Allen Show, a comedy show that was shown all over the country. This is where he showed off the nervous man, his most famous work. He would fake interviews where he looked scared, shaking and totally out of place while saying he was a surgeon, an expert in demolition, or someone in a high-stakes job that didn't fit. People laughed a lot at the difference, but the idea came from real life. Don thought it was funny when he saw a guy give a scared speech. After that, he dreamed about a character who was worried. When he woke up, he wrote the rest of the act. Not everyone got it at first. A nightclub owner in Manhattan said that the daily process was dull. But Don's co-stars from the Broadway show No Time for Sergeants couldn't stop laughing when he tried it out on them. He knew he had something because of that. He was on Gary Moore's show, and then Steve Allen invited him to be on his big show. People really liked it. Don Knotts went from being just another failing comic to a well-known name in an instant. In 1955, Don Knotts met Andy Griffith. That meeting changed both of their lives for good. In a play called No Time for Sergeants, which opened on October 20th at the Alvin Theater in New York, they were both cast together. Behind the scenes, they were still close like they were on stage. They clicked right away. They were both from little places. They both had that easy Southern charm, and when it came to entertainment, they were both on point. Don Knotts' first movie role came when the play was made into a movie in 1958. Griffith was one of the Broadway actors who were kept for the movie. Don Knotts played bridge with friends at their Los Angeles home in February 1960. Andy Griffith played the part of a small-town sheriff named Andy Taylor while they watched an episode of The Danny Thomas Show. Knotts saw more than that. He called Griffith on the phone. His pitch was easy to understand. What if there was a junior sheriff, a deputy who is nervous and cocky to bounce ideas off of? Knotts took work. Griffith was given a new chance. Knotts didn't just get a job because of that call. It gave rise to one of the most famous TV figures ever. Beardy Fife. This wasn't just a thought. Knotts and Griffith had already worked together on Sergeants, so it was clear that they got along. Executive producer Sheldon Leonard claimed to not know what to do behind the scenes. He said to Knotts that he would think about it, but he really wanted him for the part. Knotts had a few more weeks to film the Steve Allen Show. Leonard kept his cool. After 3 weeks it was official, they had Barney Fife in. It's possible that the Andy Griffith Show would have been lost if not for that call. One thing was wrong though. Andy Griffith was supposed to be the funny one at first. Don Knotts, that's what the plan was for the first episode, just the straight man. Things changed by the second episode though. Griffith knew the roles had to switch as soon as he saw Knott do nothing during the search. Griffith said in an interview in 1993, "I was supposed to be the comic. That is until Don came on. Then I knew he should be funny, so I played it straight." The show was saved by that choice. The dynamic was quickly rewrote. Now the show was all about the chaos Barney's arrogance had caused, and the way Sheriff Taylor calmly solves problems. The workers in the studio even said they thought the change would make the show a hit. Griffith was told in 6 months you'll be in the top 10. He was right. People liked how well they got along with each other. What came next was nothing less than takeover. Don Knotts played more than just a funny double agent. He set the bar for everyone else. From 1961 to 1967, he won 5 Emmys for being the best supporting actor. The only breaks were in 1964 and 1965, but he came back strong. Who is his rival? Big names in Hollywood like Robert Redford and George C. Scott. Still, Knotts kept winning. It was even recorded by Guinness World Records as the most Emmys won by a lead actor for the same part in the same show. Because of how well he played Barney, the Museum of Broadcast Communications said that he was both funny and sad, cocky and overly romantic, always wrong but never mean. That made him stand out and be remembered. Things changed though in 1965. Knotts thought the show would end in 5 years. Griffith had said that more than once. In the 5th season, Knotts began to think about his future. He made a deal with Universal Studios to make 5 movies. He was ready to move on. Then there was a twist. CBS was able to persuade Griffith to keep the show going for at least 3 more years. Knotts was shocked. Andy said he was going to stay on all of a sudden. He remembered later, "Was a hard time for me. I didn't want to leave." But he had already agreed to work on the movies. Time couldn't be turned around. He had to leave. That leaving left a huge hole. Fans saw it right away. A lot of people thought the show lost its artistic spark when Knotts left. The show's humor came from his crazy, likable energy. It felt like something was missing without him. Then the real blow to the gut, the honest truth. Andy Griffith became wealthy by owning most of the show, but Knotts only got paid like any other performer. About $1,250 every show. That's around $35,000 a year. That's around $35,000 a year. Even though it wasn't nothing. Griffith's cut made it look incredibly low. Knotts didn't own any of the business. In the end, his boss said it was a bad deal. Knotts finally asked for more after 5 years of making the show a hit and won 5 Emmys. Not half of the show, but a little bit of it. Griffith got it wrong though. He believed Knotts was asking for half of his bet. Their business partnership ended because of the mistake. In 1964, Don Knotts signed his first big movie deal. It seemed like a dream. The head of Universal Studios, Lou Wasserman, gave him a 5-year deal. It wasn't just any deal though. Don was able to pick his own projects and hire the best writers he knew. The company paid for him to be in at least 1 movie a year. This was everything to a kid who dreamed of movies his whole life before TV even existed. But there was anger behind the joy. Andy Griffith was getting a huge $1 million a year from CBS to keep doing the Andy Griffith Show. Don was only given $150,000. He made less than $100,000 a year when he played Barney Fife, a role that won him Emmys and love across the country. The deal with Universal was more than just a good deal. It was like finally being seen. The Ghost and Mystery Chicken, Don's first big movie with Universal, made $4 million in 5 months. It was only going to cost $500,000. That was a win, but not a huge hit. North and South America saw the most of the movie. Most people in New York had never heard of it. After that, in 1967, The Reluctant Astronaut came out. When prices were taken into account, it only made $36.4 million, and that year it was ranked 64th. His movies kept making a little money but not enough to get Universal excited. The company didn't want to keep him on after How to Frame a Fig came out in 1971. The movies just didn't do as well as his TV fame. As soon as Disney came along, everything changed. Don was cast in The Apple Dumpling Gang with Tim Conway in 1975. It made $38.8 million. People loved them both together. Conway played the stupid fool. Don was the nervous and smart one, but they were both hilariously bad at what they did. It worked to mix. The follow-up made $24.9 million in 1979. Universal didn't see what Disney did. Don did better when he worked with other people. He wasn't the only lead. It was him who stole the show. In movies like Gus, No Deposit, No Return, and Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, Disney kept putting him with Conway. Don was funny because he was awkward around the right person. But when he got his own variety show in 1970, it didn't do well at all. He tried to become a singing comedy host on the Don Knotts Show. That wasn't him. He played supporting roles, not lead roles. In one sketch, the Titanic tragedy was even made fun of. People weren't smiling. After one season, that show was over. It made Don feel scared. He was already trying to get past the idea of Barney Fife, and this setback made it worse. But his return would come from somewhere he didn't think it would. The company 3 worked for needed a new worker in 1979. It was just that Norman Fell and Audra Lindley left. Don was suggested by someone. He was given the part of Mr. Furley without even having to audition. Don was scared at first. He believed the actors were too young. It was really cool, and he'd never filmed something in front of a live crowd before. But as soon as he walked onto the stage, the crowd stood up and cheered for him for almost 10 minutes. That moment took away all doubt. The first season of Three's Company got the most viewers of any season of the show. It reached number 2 in the ratings. Don's new personality was a mix of arrogance, nervousness, and cocky confidence. Younger fans who had never seen Andy Griffith on TV fell in love with him all over again. Mr. Furley got Don back into the public eye from 1979 to 1984. His work life had ups and downs, but his home life was even more complicated. He married Kay Metz, the girl he met in college in 1947. As the daughter of a minister, the service was led by her father. They had 2 kids, Thomas and Karen. But as Don's fame grew in the 1960s, his marriage broke up. He was getting more and more anxious on set, and the long hours drove them apart. After 17 years of marriage, they split up in 1964. Don had one of the hardest times in his life when he had to raise Karen by himself. He had problems with depression and overthinking, and he became hooked on anxiety drugs. Karen was only 10 years old when her parents split up, but she took care of her dad right away. Don's panic attacks and bad moods made it hard for him to be a parent, but he still backed her dreams, even though he told her not to go into show business. He wasn't always funny. He was really sad sometimes, but he was always there for me. Really, I did want to be on the Andy Griffith Show. He got married again in 1974. Laura Lee Kukne, his second wife, stayed out of the public eye. But Don's mental health was getting worse, which shook their marriage. At that point, he was told he had macular degeneration, an eye disease that gets worse over time. He fell deeper and deeper into sadness. Laura Lee said he was afraid of going blind and lived like he had a bucket list. His constant worry about getting sick and fixation on signs broke up the marriage. In 1983, they got a divorce. After many years, Karen began to talk about what her life with Don had been really like. She talked about his mood swings, his deep sadness, and how he dealt with childhood trauma. She remembered how his dark thoughts would keep coming back to him. She often felt like she had to fix him and keep him in check. She knew her dad might lose it without her even when she was a kid. Even though Don made a lot of people laugh, he was always sad. Then Frances Yarborough showed up. In the late 1980s, she worked on his show, What a Country, and helped him remember his lines. She was 20 years old. He was 60 years old, but they became close quickly. Both of them came from crazy homes. Frances said Don was the weakest person she had ever met. Don quit smoking right away after meeting her. Don made her hide the fact that he was sick before they got married in 2002. He still wanted to work even from Andy Griffith, and he was afraid that no one would hire him if he was sick. Don had always been afraid of getting sick. It was no secret that he was a downer. Then his worst fear came true. He was really told he had macular degeneration when he was 57 years old. His vision began to fade. He finally lost the ability to drive. He was not able to read. He barely knew who people were. This was a terrible turn of events for someone who had always been afraid of getting sick. But he found a new point of view. He told the New York Times, "I bet someone who is blind would give their right arm to have my sight." Then lung cancer showed up. He told only a few people. The man kept filming. He did the role of a character in Disney's Chicken Little and was a guest star on shows like That 70s Show. But his health kept getting worse. He was taken to Cedars-Sinai because the cancer had given him asthma. He got better for a short time. His family had hope after that short burst of energy. Karen told her that he was still making jokes from his hospital bed. She had to leave the room to laugh without making people mad, but things got better quickly. Don Knotts passed away at 11 p.m. on February 24, 2006. He was 81 years old. That night Andy Griffith was with him. He told his old friend, "Jess, take a deep breath. You've got this, you've got to make it." It looked like Don heard him for a moment. He was laid to rest at Los Angeles' Westwood Village Memorial Park after he died. On his grave there are pictures of him in a number of famous parts. The writing on the wall says, "Saw the depth of people's pride and pain and turned it into something funny and sweet." That was Don changing a fight into a laugh. 10 years later, a statue was built in his honor in Morgantown, West Virginia, where he grew up. It's in front of the theater where he used to work as a young ventriloquist. Barney Fife is not shown in the figure. It shows Don Knotts, the person who saw everything,